Hello, everyone, again. Welcome to the Quantum Bridge. And it's our great pleasure to have Bálint and Zoltán back from my Chow Gar and Casper, my co-host. Well, what are we going to talk about today with the guys?
Well, anything they like is what we're actually going to talk about.
Usually.
Thank you, Gary, for passing across to me. Welcome, everybody. Welcome, guys. Lovely to see you again. And thank you, as always, for joining.
Hi, guys.
Hi.
I thought that we touched on in our last recording the whole aspect of different types of energy and power and the generation of that. From my understanding, limited though it may be, of the Chow Gar Mantis system, I believe at least that the type of power generation is incredibly important, and how you actually build and foster that or release that is also a really interesting aspect of the art. So I just hoped that we could touch on that again, and maybe both of the guys in turn would like to elaborate on how that looks and what maybe the differences or the interesting aspects of that might be. So if you don't mind touching on that, guys, over to you.
And I would like to ask my much more educated friend Bálint to talk about this, because he has already a video on YouTube about it, but I think he's the most, let's say,
qualified.
Qualified, yeah. Thank you very much.
It's a pleasure.
For the most qualified to talk about it.
Yeah, as Zoltán said, there is a video about different kind of power qualities. So I'm not gonna mention here more detail.
Yeah.
But in generally, we can say that when you talk about Kung Fu in Chinese culture, Kung Fu means that you are highly skilled in something. And originally, it was, I think it's true for every Kung Fu systems, that it was an art of power in each case. A certain kind of development method where you have refined your power, which I can refer to the last time we talked about this bull and tiger. So especially those people who have a bull power already, there's a potential for them to transfer themselves into tigers if they really want to. But don't need to be. It's not necessary. But the functionality of these kinds of powers are very different, and it is changing you how you develop yourself. It's changing your body shape outside and internally, your mental status and everything. So it's a complex system what you need to have, and all the traditional martial arts basically are aiming on this originally. But later on, of course, we have seen many changes, and they have lost in the different applications of the certain shapes. But these shapes and forms, originally they had a functionality to develop a certain kind of power, which has this functionality of fighting and a certain way to use the body. But it's definitely not the same way as for bull power. So those who have bull power, they are more functional of carrying heavy things, for example. It doesn't mean that you develop power and then you're a good mover. If you are a good Kung Fu practitioner, maybe you cannot really move a lot of furniture because it's a different thing. But in case of fighting, it is more useful for that. And what we can mention here, that the power qualities can be very different and can be differentiated as you are on this Kung Fu journey. So you are facing a lot of different powers, and it has different sensations in the body. So you can defer them, defer the physical, defer the internal, which is sounds as a mystical term, but once you have it, it's not mystical anymore. It's mystical because for those who doesn't know about it, it's true for everything. It
Yeah,
becomes
course,
mystical
yeah.
if you don't know about it.
in non-martial terms, I suppose you could maybe say there's different characters in people. You have an extrovert type person and an introverted type person. And these have different ways of using them. So, and I suppose, like you said there as well, in bodybuilding or something, being able to lift really heavy weights is different to punch hard, for example. You'll see a lot of martial artists. They're quite small frames, not huge muscles and things like that. Yeah. So, like you say, there's a difference in the application, what you're trying to achieve as well, isn't there? In that sense.
Exactly. When I was a kid, then bodybuilding was very, very popular. But at that time, when I was a kid, at least in where I was living in Romania, there was not too many martial arts places available. It was only judo and karate at that time, and not too many of them. And so bodybuilding was very popular because bodybuilding was so if you're a bodybuilder, you look like you're a very macho man, you're strong, so you could project this kind of visual interpretation of being a man, a strong man. And we all thought that if someone is a bodybuilder who is strong, that it's by nature they can fight. And as a kid, where I lived was, I won't say it was a violent area, but it was sometimes happened, and some people got some arguments and they had to fight, or they fought each other. And by my surprise, in some cases, people who were much skinnier won over huge guys, bodybuilders, quite easily sometimes. It came out that they were not doing anything special. They were just, let's say, skilled in street fighting because they were living in an area where fighting every day was a usual just daily life, So when they went home before breakfast or before lunch or before something, they did some fighting. And that was strange. And later, when I started to do martial arts, I understood that being very muscular or being strong by nature or building a strong body doesn't mean that you can use it in a fight. And in many cases, it can even slow you down. Of course, there are exceptions when we see people like Mike Tyson or big boxers or big fighters in UFC, MMA, that they can be fast and they can be strong, but they have a different kind of development. So, and what I wanted to ask Bálint to mention just a few types of strength or power or force, because we have different terms, especially in Chinese. There are very interesting terms regarding this, with small nuances making the difference between these terms. Just let's mention, because I think that most of the audience don't understand what you're saying. That power, strength. So what's the difference between what kind of strengths we have, or we differentiate in Chow Gar, in Mantis?
Yeah, it's also a language challenge because in English, I think they don't have so much word for power as they have in Chinese language, so they can differentiate it more. But I think still we can describe. So basically, what we spoke about as a bull power is physical, which you can develop even in martial arts. It doesn't mean you're physically weak. At the same time, you can develop stamina power, which is a long-lasting physical. It's different than have a huge external power for using in one go, but you can use it for a longer period of time when you have a stamina, and it's also a different sensation. From that, you can develop internal, and internal power is highly different than physical. It has many attributes that you can recognize it. There's one main attribute. I think it could be an explanation that when you are expanding force internally, the external movement looks much shorter. So actually, you can make a bigger internal move, and from the outside, it doesn't seem at all, or it is just a short movement, but the effect is the same as you would do a long range movement. I don't know if that would make any sense to you.
It absolutely does, for me at least. That I think that's a great explanation of it. The other thing, Bálint, just to touch on a couple of areas that maybe just again to help with aspects of English, because you guys, it's great that you can come on and do this in a language that isn't your mother tongue, and it's beautiful that you're willing to do that, right? And that you can. I mean, we certainly couldn't turn around and do it back to you guys, right? So just to say that from my perspective, there are sort of subtle energies going on. There's sort of rising and lowering energies. There's in and out energies, and all of these different energies. There's also this energy, and I'll try and do it from sort of the Chinese as well side of it, that you may even touch on this area of geng or shock power, of cultivating or releasing or accessing, whatever the right word might be for that, but an innate power that we all have, but that actually is a very high level of Kung Fu to tap into it. And I'm getting the sense that most people in system like yours are looking to find ways to actually release a power that isn't this built up external power of larger muscles and a bigger frame, but actually to connect with, on a very subtle level, almost a subconscious level, another type of power completely. Now, I might have got that completely wrong. I might have got that a little bit right, but maybe you can frame that or talk around that if that's got any resonance with you guys.
Yeah, maybe I can start, and then Zoltán can add to that. If you mentioned like Gang Tang, which means shock power in English translation, but is the Cantonese term, but they have in Mandarin also, they have Jin, and Gang is the same thing, which is we call power, but maybe force is a more appropriate word for this as a translation, but force can also lead to misunderstandings.
Yeah,
because we think of movies about this, and what you said, that is it becomes a compulsive action when you do something that you have unknowingly. So you say that this skill people naturally have, but it's true that it can become an action with a more controlled action from someone. Suppose if you burn yourself with a candle and then you have a reaction, what you automatically do is you do it by instinct, you do automatically.
Yeah.
But when you practice any system where you have the skill of this shock, and then it's in your body already. It becomes a skill. It's not something you need to prepare with breathing exercises or do certain kind of motions. It's in your body. That's why it's a skill. So you can have it in all the motions you have. It's not something that you can do without having it. It's also an important thing that's why it becomes mystical, because if you just want to do shock power without having the shock power, it will be something else. Maybe you try to imitate, but it's the content will be not the same. Maybe you just imitate a motion or alike.
Yeah, I cannot really add too much to this, and yeah, it's very hard to describe. I think it's a good way of explanation to have a kind of a feeling that what this is, what Bálint mentioned, that if you're just doing something and someone gets in the back of you and burns your elbow with a candle, you don't know about it at all, so you're not prepared for being burned. Then you suddenly just do a motion, right? Your mind, your brain is sending a very fast command to your body to just bring your elbow away without consciously thinking about it. Consciously thinking about it, we basically slow it down, because you're using such circuits in your brain which are slower than this instinct kind of command to your muscles. And this kind of reaction, this kind of movement of power, what this creates when you're burned, it's very close to this shock power. My Sifu says it's the same. Just what we do in Chow Gar Praying Mantis is that we are training our body and our mind or our brain in a way that basically we can do it consciously when we do a motion, which becomes unconscious, because anytime you do it, it will be a nature of yours, a skill which you have, but it's something very similar, and that's why it is fast and short. It's short. And what Bálint mentioned is also important, that you cannot mimic it, so you have to have it. You cannot do it. That's Sifu always saying that you can copy my movements, but you cannot copy my power. And what makes my movements look good or effective, that is the power inside. So that's why it's a mistake when people say that I can copy any system, because it's not true. Then if you say that, you don't understand what you're talking about, because you cannot copy, especially in such a case when they are having a special power, the fudging or gang tangeng or whatever. So and that is why it's very difficult, the path of such a system, because you have to accept that you cannot do it by yourself. You have to train yourself, and not suddenly, but once you have it, and then it becomes stronger and stronger and stronger, and more obvious that basically you have it. So we always say, our students say, when I will be like you, or when I will have this kind of power? And I said, I don't know when you will have it, and you don't have to believe it that this will happen, but it will, because this is him and him and him and him who went through this whole journey. So it's very really difficult to discuss about. Even we have this shirt, I think last time was here, which was saying that I have shock power, and it's in Chinese. In Chinese, it's a Chinese description with Chinese terms. And some of our friends who is Chinese, maybe he's also Hakka. He said, even you go to Hong Kong or China, when Hakka people live, they won't understand what is there written. So even that is not so common. So even they don't understand. Just all those people who are in this Kung Fu area, environment, or on this journey, they understand usually these terms. So it's not so obvious even for Chinese speaking people, what is this?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I think that those two explanations of something that is quite esoteric, actually, and needs to be felt on some level, either through you yourself, i.e. the revealing thereof, or via feeling somebody like yourself or another Sifu and so on, who has that ability,
Exactly.
Beyond that, it's very difficult to. So just to say, I think you did very well to verbalize it. One thing I did want to mention in terms of the martial application, people might just find this interesting, that ultimately, despite the fact that you practice a whole host of different movements, the ability to have that type of internal root and power and facility to bring that energy forward means, I believe, from what I've heard from you guys before, and I've seen as well other people talking about this, it gives effectively infinite technique, i.e. you can react to a situation and what you do may not look like a technique you've learned, but will have the effect of, well, the desired effect, I suppose. So you guys might want to touch on that area.
A simple answer to that. My Sifu says always, for me, every move I do is a technique. In general, people don't understand this, what this means. It means that when you have this type of power or similar one, like the Geng Tang Geng, it doesn't matter what you do. It doesn't matter what you do. And what we say many times in the course, that the most important part usually of any system, which is a power-based system, is the power itself. They use techniques and forms to channel the power or to create a frame in which you use it, a shape in which you use it, and helps you to have kind of a, first of all, the frame and channeling, a second, a way of understanding how you can use it, how you can apply it. But basically, after a while, it doesn't matter what technique you do. That's our friends Attila always say that, does a bear or a tiger has a technique?
Yeah.
No, they don't. They have a power. They do what they want to do. And that's the freedom. That's what everyone wants to finally achieve, is the freedom of movements. That whatever you do, it works because you have the skill to put the power into the whatever you do. I don't want to say technique anymore in this case, because,
well, it's beyond technique at that point.
Yeah, yes. It sounds a little bit, fantastic or whatever, but actually it's not. So if anyone who is really strong, let's forget a little bit about Geng Tang Geng or fudging. Anyone who is really strong, what they do, just do a big whatever from any direction, and it most probably will work, and no one will ask, and what technique you did. I don't know, did something. Okay.
Well, it's maybe too late at that point because you're on the floor. So.
yeah. Maybe the friends you're looking or outside. What does it take? I want to learn that technique. Yeah.
I want to learn. I'd like to do that to you.
Yeah, I do learn that. The technique is my power. That's what I use.
I would say, just a quick intersection, just because I like my kung fu films. So there is a very famous movie. It's a Wing Chun movie called Warriors 2, and in the training section and towards the end as well, actually, they do exactly what Zoltán said. For him to get his big killer punch out at the end, they stab his elbow with needles. So to get that shock, that's it just came back to me when you was talking about that. I thought, I know this thing. And also,
you mean they're stabbing Jackie Chan?
No, it's Warriors 2 is a Sammo Hung and Castle.
Oh, Sammo, yeah, sorry, yeah. Hung Gumball, yeah, sorry.
But yeah, when Casper mentioned about the feeling of things as well, I'm going back some years now. Well, I was lucky enough to go to a seminar with a guy called James DeMille. He was one of Bruce Lee's students. So he was going through the 1-inch punch techniques and things like that. But, he would get, at the time, it was just a phone book on your chest. But then he would do it so you could feel the difference. I think the main thing for me is something that just hits the surface, as opposed to when he's doing it, it's going through the body, which is like a wave, which is why they can do that thing of lining people up, I suppose, and you see it go through it. But yeah, he would just go deeper and deeper by flowing that through, that energy through the body. So I think it's a lot different like that, personally, having felt it as well. So luckily, I'm still here to tell the tale. Yeah, it's good.
We're showing how old we are when we talk about things like phone books.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's not like a phone anymore. It was a book that had lots of numbers in it. It was really thick, like this. That's if you're too young to remember what that is.
It's a big, thick book. That's
Big
the
Yeah.
one.
thick book. Yeah.
But Caspar, you have touched a topic in the beginning
Yeah.
about information. That, as you said, that Western culture is basically based on learning something about having enough information
Yeah.
about it or something like this. You didn't use you didn't explain it especially in this way, but as far as I could recall,
Yeah. Do you
and
want me to touch on that again, or are you?
uh, yeah,
Maybe I should, because maybe nobody else heard it. All I was
yeah,
saying about that, and that might well have been off camera, was that from my experience, I have much more resonance with a more Eastern tradition, and certainly a traditional Kung Fu tradition, of bringing out the innate ability and the strength of character and will, and also ultimately those high level techniques or higher level techniques from pushing people through a certain type of forging them in a furnace of pain, really. But actually, it's just repetition, really, I suppose, and a lot of willpower and a lot of mental direction. So a lot of directed thinking and action versus I feel that the Western traditions generally are to force a lot of information into people, and it's all intellectual, it's all cerebral. And the idea is the more you retain, the better you are.
Mhm.
But actually, you're not gaining the same type of wisdom that you are from an Eastern tradition, particularly something like your lineage. So, look, I am biased because I love the Chow Gar lineage, right? I love what you guys do, but I still think that that is an area that's worth even just bringing to the forefront. That there are two areas. There's a very much Western tradition, and there is certainly an older Eastern tradition that has a lot more resonance for me. It may for you guys and the audience, it may not. But
I have some experiences regarding that, and I think it would have some value to share
lovely.
in this round because, as you say, yes, the general attitude towards our system as well, that people think that they haven't achieved something because they are lacking of some information. Okay.
Yeah.
And they think, okay, if I get all the information about the system, and then I will know how to do or have to explain and so on. But we could see that you can have all the information, even in the beginning.
Yeah.
You can train the same amount with the same type of training you can have with a group of people. But the result can be very different for each of them. And it's because you cannot save the internal work, what you need to do during these trainings, because it's as an internal art, the great thing in it from the beginning that you need to search for something, you need to understand something during the time, and even if you understand the things, what the information what you get intellectually, you
Yeah.
understand all the things, but you just cannot do it. And even they show it to you, they explain to you, you have the practice, you need to put in your part. I can give you just one example, and maybe that's more more clear. You know, some people can move their ears. Okay, I'm not one of them, but some people can move their ears with a certain kind of muscle, and you know it is possible, and it's no you know that some people can do it, but you don't know how, And when you start to do it, you have no idea, because you would move all the other muscles in your head, what you can, instead of your ego.
Yeah.
And basically, this is what is happening here. There are a lot of things can be explained, but you need to really work it out on your own.
Yeah.
How to do. And that's why sometimes ideas can be different as well, because the sensations are different. Maybe you learn the same thing, as I said, you have the same information, but the interpretation could be different, depending on also on your level, or how is your understanding. And that this can lead to arguments also, because sometimes the sensations are different, or you would explain it in a different way than I would do. Maybe we do the same thing, but we have different sensations. So that's why we talk about it in a different way.
Just like life in general.
That's why actually in traditional systems teachings, there is someone, in our case called gatekeeper grandmaster, who can actually anytime check you. So he's the one. That's why he is the one, because he understands the most this system, and he has actually, let's call, the right sensation and the right knowledge about it. So you can go there and you can check yourself, and what he's telling you and what you feel when you do it with him, something, that's the ground zero where you can start. You can measure yourself to that ground zero. And in many cases, that's the problem, that people who never had connection to that ground zero, or they forget to go back time to time to get checked, these kind of interpretations or sensations can lead them in completely different directions, which can be also effective, but it's not what it is or what it should be. So that is why this is a very sensitive story, and important story, that what Bálint mentioned, you have to be very, very conscious while you're developing yourself, and in that way as well, that you really check yourself with someone who is good, or with, you can ask Bálint. We are talking a lot about what we feel, or what is our understanding, and checking it. But do you have the same experience or the same interpretation? Yes. The same feeling? Yes. Of course, everyone is a little bit different, but in general, it should be something very close to this ground zero, what I just mentioned. So that's why this journey is sometimes it can be very difficult for people.
Guys, we're, as ever, I found it fascinating, and we're already coming to the end of our allotted time. It does bring me back to a thought I've had for a while, and we've sort of touched on it a bit in the other ones, about the ability to move higher in these types of traditional Chinese martial arts systems feels very much to me based on being able, strangely enough, because we get into this sort of area often out of a level of ego, or protecting the self and protecting the ego, and actually to get to these higher levels that we're now touching on, which are really interesting because they're the esoteric area, they're the beauty of it that separate it from many other things, which I won't name. But there's this aspect. It does seem to start to mean that the ability to partner with other people in a way where you are as much interested in their progress as your own, and all of these other aspects that are higher aspects of awareness in my world, at least, and are to do with parking the ego to some level. I think, again, we've opened that area up, and maybe we can find a way to frame what is, again, a very difficult subject to touch on and to cover. But I'd love to have your thoughts on that maybe next time, and perhaps that does lead us into another discussion. But I think you've both done incredibly well at putting across an area that is not easy in your first language, never mind in your second one. So I just want to again say thank you, and I hope you'll be willing to join us for another time on the Quantum Bridge soon.
Thank you very much for inviting us.
I'm finishing, if if you can send over that other video for us that Bálint did about power, and we'll make sure that that's in the information if people want to watch that one as well to get the sort of wider picture in that sense. We'll put that there for the viewers. Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, in the
Otherwise,
show notes section.
Thank you again, guys. It's been great.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Until next time, everybody. Thank you very much indeed.
Bye bye.
Bye. Bye. Bye.
Bye.